President Trump just announced there is finally a deal to reopen the federal government after a 35-day shutdown, the longest in U.S. history. President Trump now says, hey, he's okay with a short-term deal, one that includes exactly $0.0 for his border wall, the reason for the shutdown, $0.0, which coincidentally is exactly equal to the last two paychecks for 800,000 federal workers, proving the government has been shut down now for 35 days for absolutely no reason. President Trump upended the process of funding the government to demand something that he never got. He inflicted pain on more than 1 million Americans for no reason, no result. Adding insult to injury, moments ago, Senator Schumer, the Democratic leader in the Senate, scolded President Trump for this long, unnecessary battle.
Hopefully now the president has learned his lesson. We cannot ever hold American workers hostage again.
CNN's Caitlin Collins joins me now live from the White House. Caitlin, this new government funding bill, it's only for 3 weeks. What happens, bear with me now, what happens if at the end of this 3-week period, the president still is not going to see any border wall money?
Well, Jake, according to what he told reporters in the Rose Garden today, either the government will shut down or he'll invoke a national emergency to bypass Congress to then fund and build his border wall. Now, today he faced the political reality that Democrats do not want to pay for the president's border wall, and now he's facing down the question of what he'll do in 3 weeks if they still haven't changed their minds.
I am very proud to announce today that we have reached a deal to end the shutdown and reopen the federal government.
President Trump backing off his 35-day standoff with Democrats today, announcing a deal to reopen the government temporarily.
In a short while, I will sign a bill to open our government for 3 weeks until February 15th.
The president's endorsement in the Rose Garden paving the way for Congress to pass spending bills that would reopen the government for 3 weeks. But the deal is seen as a cave to Democrats, who the president has failed to force to pay for his border wall once again.
I am asking Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to put this proposal on the floor immediately.
Trump implying if he can't come to an agreement with Democrats in the next 3 weeks, he'll invoke a national emergency and bypass Congress.
If we don't get a fair deal from Congress, the government will either shut down on February 15th again, or I will use the powers afforded to me under the laws and the Constitution of the United States to address this emergency.
The short-term spending bill only includes $1.3 billion for border security and no new funding for the wall, making it a remarkable come down for a president who declared for weeks he wouldn't waver, but today framed it as a win.
This is an opportunity for all parties to work together for the benefit of our whole beautiful, wonderful nation.
The presidential announcement coming after a White House official said air travel delays that rippled across the nation Friday played a major role in his decision, telling CNN this is getting worse and worse. He knows this has to end. And after members of the president's inner circle faced backlash for downplaying the financial hardship of the shutdown, Trump making a point to thank them today.
Many of you have suffered far greater than anyone but your families would know or understand.
Now, Jake, the longest government shutdown in history hasn't yielded anything for the president. He didn't get any money for his border wall. He's frustrated Republicans. He didn't do his base any favors by caving to the Democrats' demands today, and he even took a hit in the polls. Now, there are two things to watch over the next few days. That's whether or not the president tries to move forward with that initially scheduled State of the Union address on Tuesday, and two, how he responds to the overwhelmingly negative response from people who are in his conservative, hardline immigration base. Jake.
All right, Caitlin Collins at the White House, thanks so much. Well, let's chat about this. Bill, I'll start with you. Did the president cave?
Sure, and he had to because he was losing support from Republican senators. McConnell held enough senators to prevent the Democratic bill from passing yesterday, but the Democrats got more votes than the Republicans, which doesn't usually happen in a 57-43 Republican Senate. And I think they had their regular lunch, or maybe it's not so regular on Thursday, of all the senators, it went 2 hours instead of the normal 1 or 2.5 hours, I think, perhaps, with real expressions of discontent and sort of this, I can't hold this anymore, not from Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski, but from Senator Bozeman of Arkansas and all kinds of loyalists in the Republican conference who were getting phone calls from their state, from the workers, but also from businessmen, from agricultural interests, saying, this is crazy, this cannot go on. So Trump caved to reality. He only got this 3-week extension, which means that in 3 weeks, what happens in 3 weeks?
Well, he'll probably, my guess would be he invokes the national emergency.
Yeah. It's less than not getting anything. Like, he lost a lot here. I mean, you think about it, in the 35 days, he lost $1.6 billion that he would have had if he agreed to the legislation that would have passed before the shutdown.
He lost for border security.
Right. And he lost a critical amount of leverage. Nancy Pelosi now knows exactly when he's willing, where he'll cave and what his pain points are. And then the other thing is, I think to Bill's point, which he's lost, one of the bigger problems going forward in the next 3 weeks, he may have lost the faith of some of his strongest supporters previously up on Capitol Hill. And that doesn't give him any sort of, additional leverage going forward.
And Senator Turner, let me point to this, perhaps not coincidentally, this morning we saw some even more dire response. Obviously, for the 800,000 employees and the contractors, it's been awful. But this morning we saw mass flight delays. There was a stoppage at LaGuardia. The FBI director released a video slamming the shutdown. The Trump-appointed FBI director, at least 14,000 IRS workers just didn't go to work.
That's right.
And then it was the second day without a paycheck, the second paycheck period. A full month of no pay, the second paycheck period for the 800,000 federal employees.
This is a hot mess. The president's a hot mess. This is a hot mess. And more importantly about which side won in terms of just the pure politics. Over 800,000 people, and that's not even counting the contract workers, have suffered through this for a president who got absolutely nothing. He brung the pain to all of these people, and he got nothing in return for this, and all they got is grief. And then also, we know, as big as the bureaucracy is, they're not going to recover from this tomorrow.
Right.
If the president had any pride about himself, he would make sure that all of the people who are required to be there to process checks were there right now through the weekend, whatever it took to make sure that these workers got their money. But he really doesn't care, and that was shown by him. It was shown by people who work in his administration. Even his family members weighed in on this. I think his daughter-in-law said, it's okay, this is bigger than one person. It's beyond cavalier. It's really sickening that the president would take the people impacted by this directly, and then, to quote Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., what affects one directly affects us all indirectly.
Sure.
All of America was impacted by
Now, you
this.
can't live in Washington, D.C., which obviously has a lot of federal workers, without hearing from cab drivers, Uber drivers, restaurateurs, food truck owners, how awful things have been for the last months.
That's right.
And Jen, I want to get to a point that Kevin said that you brought up also yesterday, which is flashback a couple months. Nancy Pelosi, people are saying, is she even going to be elected Speaker of the House? There are enough Democrats that are wavering on her. 30-something Democrats said they weren't going to vote for her. Where is Nancy Pelosi now when it comes to the Democratic caucus?
Well, it's really remarkable. I mean, if you look at where we were in November, even after the Democrats won back the House, there was so much uncertainty that we were all talking about here about, could she be elected Speaker? How would she fight off the moderates, et cetera? And now the wall and Trump's insistence on the wall has actually unified the Democratic Party. Pelosi's strength and kind of standing firm on this has unified the Democratic Party and the Democratic caucus at a time where it is very diverse with 40 new members. So that has been a real gift to her. And I would say, she's never been more powerful than she is today because of that. And if you look at what has happened over the past couple of days, even Trump supporters, sort of to Kevin's point, are questioning now whether she is actually running the government and not Trump. And that's not what is happening, but that's not a place you want your supporters and former staff to be. He looks weak, and that is something he always fights against.
Now, of course, there is this discussion that's going to go forward now about whether there will be sort of any border wall negotiation or any immigration reform, whatever. I don't know how it's going to happen, but Schumer talked about maybe a conference committee. We'll see. Listen to what President Trump said about what Democrats were telling him privately.
They have said they are for complete border security, and they have finally and fully acknowledged that having barriers, fencing, or walls, or whatever you want to call it, will be an important part of the solution.
I don't know what he's talking about.
Who knows? But I come back to the Republican senators. I mean, this has hurt them in the polls. It's hurt them in the country, as it should have, in my opinion. But I just think when we say Trump insists on this, or Trump is able to, fight back on that, it's because he has had the Republican Senate, now that they've lost the House, behind him. And I think that is now very precarious. McConnell held his people together at some cost to himself. When people wanted to bolt earlier, the senators kept voting loyally or supported McConnell and refusing to bring anything to the floor for 4 weeks.
No, it's incredible.
And then voted yesterday, except for six of them.
Stick around. We're going
to stick with him. So, I mean, the degree to which going forward, he will not have the automatic support of the Senate Majority Leader or Republican senators, I think, can't be of rest.
Yeah, we'll see.